It was a typical provincial Saturday. All three of us were busy, and everything depended on the schedule, tightly connected, like atoms on the edge of a knife. I took my daughter to swim practice, stopping along the way to pick up her best friend, Kylie. The girls had to do a group swim and several training runs, and then train in the gym. While some of the girls trained with weights, coaches took turns taking each girl out for individual workouts or time trials to gauge progress. When Erica was younger, I would sit in the stands and watch her throughout practice. I would probably still do it if she hadn't told me it made her nervous. Her exact words were, "Look, Daddy, go live your life, and I'll let myself live mine." So I'll drop her off, then come home and wash the car. My car is an immaculate 2013 Boss 302. I must admit that I am playing around with the car. He's never seen rain, and I'm pretty sure he has no idea snow exists. I only drive in June, July, August, and September on days when there is less than a 10% chance of rain. I have another Mustang for April, May, October, and November. During the rest of the year and in bad weather, I drive a Jeep. Many people don't know this, but Jeeps love rain, snow, and mud. Anyway, while I wash the car and drop Eric off, my wife Dana does her shopping for the week. She comes home and leaves the groceries. We clean them up together, and we both head off to Saturday classes. There are times when two of us or all three of us do something together, but most of the time we are separated. So that Saturday, after a few veiled threats and flirtations, while we put away the food, "This bed better be fixed. Mister," she said. "You better remember to take some lube," I said. "I don't buy things for your precious Mustangs," she smirked. "I always buy the wrong things, remember?" She walked up to me and ran her fingers through my hair and then ran up the stairs. A few minutes later, she returned with her yoga mat and yoga bag. She kissed me and shook her head, looking at me. "Yes, I know," I said. "The bed is still broken." "No, I was just thinking how lucky we all are to have each other," she said. "I love you, Eric." "Yes, yes," I grinned. She rolled her eyes, put on a pair of those big, ugly sunglasses that women seem to love, and headed to her yoga class. At that moment, I started to really relax. I had about 3 hours to wash my car before the car show I was going to start. I had already washed the inside of the car the night before, so all I had to do was wash the outside. Waves of love washed over me as I washed a small area of the outside of the car and then rinsed it off. It was not only a love for cars, although there was that too. I was really happy with my life. I had a wife whom I loved and who loved me. We had a wonderful daughter. Our house almost paid off, and my future in my chosen career was great. Maybe it was my mistake. Maybe I shouldn't have stood there with a bucket of cleansers and gels counting my blessings. Perhaps my thoughts about the love of my life were too tempting for a whimsical fate. Perhaps she decided that I was doing too well and needed to interfere with me a little. On the other hand, it could just be numbers or odds. It might just be time for a very long run of good luck to turn into bad luck. It started out very innocently. I felt a vibration against my side. I answered the phone in the voice of a hysterical woman. "Eric." "Oh God, I'm so glad you answered. I can't get through to Dana. Ronnie had a heart attack and—" "Slow down, Nancy," I said. "Are you in the hospital?" "We're in the ambulance," she sobbed. "Nance, ask the ambulance driver what hospital you're going to," I told her. "CC Cedar Springs is in Michigan," she told me. "Nancy, these days a heart attack is serious, but not always fatal," I said. "It's bad, but we'll get through it. Stay calm, I'll pick up Dana and get there as soon as I can." As I spoke, I was washing every trace of soap off the paint of my Boss 302. The car can always be washed later, but I didn't want to risk damaging the paint by leaving soapy residue on it. I hopped into my everyday Mustang and pulled out of the driveway. I tried to use the car's synchronization system to call Dana, but I knew it wouldn't work. I also knew that this was the same reason why Dana's mom couldn't contact her. The yoga studio Dana went to was very traditional. Students were not allowed to bring phones with them, because a call would supposedly violate the sanctity of pure yoga. It seemed stupid to me, and I often reminded Dana that we have a child and emergencies happen all the time. We are having a baby, Eric, she always told me. She has two parents, and she always calls you first. I'm sure it goes without saying that you have your quirks too, like the fact that you spend an absurd amount of money on about 20 or 30 different car wash products, but only spend $3 or $4 on the cheapest body wash to wash your own ass. Who does that? The outdated no phones policy was just one of the reasons I hated the yoga studio. When I drove up to the small building and saw the sign, everything came back to me. The sign featured a huge cartoon bear in a strange pose on a rug. The sign said, Yoga Bear. At first, I thought it was just a spelling mistake, but it was supposedly a clever play on words. This is how they explained it to me when I pointed it out to them. Don't you understand, dear? Dana told me. The bear is naked. Yes, the place is traditional, so traditional that all the practitioners are naked. I forbade Dana from going there. She began to go twice as often. Eric, I'm 34 years old. She laughed. I've already given birth to a baby. No one cares about my sagging breasts, flabby belly, and fat ass except you. Nonsense, Dana, I exclaimed. You may not be young, but you're still attractive and you know it. You just want to show off to these young guys. Eric, drop me off at the club and pick me up, she said. Look at those hot, incredibly skinny young girls, and you'll know that none of those guys would even look twice at me. Plus, most of those guys in class are gay. So I did it. I accepted her offer, and it blew my mind. There were a couple of fat women who were trying to lose weight, but the rest of the women in the class looked like they were in the waiting room for a beauty casting. They were all different. There were long-legged beauties with small, perky breasts. There were strong, cheerleader-style girls with huge breasts. Even though I thought she was attractive, Dana hardly stood out in this lake of beauty. But damn, Dana was mine, and I didn't want her showing off my stuff to the freaks with hipster beards, weird haircuts, and funky glasses who talked about saving the planet and hated my cars. Do you realize how much damage you do to the environment every time you drive this thing? Asked one of them. I'm a proud American, I chuckled. What does this have to do with it? He asked. The president says all this crap about global warming and the environment is a hoax, I told him. What about all the noise she makes? He said. Music to my ears, I smiled. He just shook his head, got on his bike, and rode off. I was hoping his beard would get caught in it and come off his face. I insisted, and Dana ignored it. It's not like I can punish her or anything. She's a grown woman. So I acted like a child. I sulked and stopped talking to her. I even stopped sleeping with her. This caught her attention. It was serious for me not to constantly pester her about sex. She started trying to tease me. She flashed her breasts or ass at me at every opportunity. The guys in your yoga classes see a lot more, I laughed. Yes, but they can't touch him, she said. In the end, she won. I lasted about 3 weeks before she came into the shower with me. Eric, stop being like that, she told me. The only one this hurts is you. And she was right. It was hard to go without sex. I figured she would give up yoga like all the other workout fads she went through, and there were a lot of them. Each of them left us something as a keepsake. All she had left from doing aerobics was her leg warmers. All she had left of Tebow were the videotapes that kept the table in the garage from rocking. The P90X DVDs made great stands, and so on. She did naked yoga for a maximum of 6 months. It was already the 7th month, and I was still passively protesting. She cut back on her yoga classes to twice a week. She went on Saturday morning and Wednesday evening. She noticed that we didn't have sex after her class. On Wednesdays, she always complained that I didn't give her a massage after class. But we both knew that if I put my hands on her, it would lead to sex, so I always found something to do. She reluctantly accepted it. But the lack of sex on Saturday nights, especially if we went out somewhere, or even if we were doing some kind of family activity that brought us all together, really pissed her off. We always argued about this. Erica had to finish off a couple of them. She knocked on our door and asked what we were fighting about. Dana always told her that I was spending too much money on those damn cars again. But Mom, Dad loves these cars, and I love my dad, Erica always said. And Dana usually gave in. She always had a weird look on her face, and to be honest, I always had a weird feeling in the pit of my stomach. Having that little girl defend me just gave me chills down my spine and butterflies in my stomach. I always hugged her, and at such moments I felt much closer to her. It always made me feel like I didn't have the ability to love her anymore. My heart felt like it was breaking from the amount of feelings I had for my daughter. I mean, damn, I love Dana, but I would literally die for Erica. I always carried her back to bed, even though she was 10 years old and supposedly incapable of doing such things. When I returned to our room, the arguments were usually still far from over. We simply expressed our point of view in a whisper so that Erica would not hear us. "Why are you such an asshole?" Dana whispered. "I tolerate your running around. I tolerate your borderline madness about Mustangs." "Dana, it's not the same thing," I whispered back hotly. "When I go for a run, I'm fully dressed and running alone. When I finish, I go straight home." We waited a moment before continuing because her voice rose to the point where Erica could hear us. "And as for my cars," I continued, "I always ask you before I buy a car or make any big purchases. Although this is my money, I'm asking you because we are married, so everything is ours." She nodded her head. "But if everything is ours, why do you have such a sour face every time I ask you to drive one of our cars?" she asked. "Because you have your own car," I said. "And?" she asked. "And your car is all dented and scratched," I said shyly. "So you think you have to protect our cars from me," she smiled. "And yoga is just my way of protecting my body. Yoga is the way I keep fit so you don't have a wife with a fat and out-of-shape body. Eric, I can't run, I can't lift weights, but I can do yoga." "Why can't you do yoga with your clothes on?" I asked. "It's not the nudity," she complained. "I just love this place and the people in it. But when you reject me, it makes me feel like some kind of dirty slut." We always agreed to think about it, but we never settled the dispute. "Hi, Eric," said the receptionist at the yoga center. She always looked at me dreamily. She was a 20-year-old Indian girl who, although beautiful, looked like she could use a few yoga classes herself. "Hello, Indira," I smiled. "I know I shouldn't go in there, but it's an emergency. She'll feel bad that I pulled her out of class, but her dad had a heart attack." I entered the hall and saw only naked bodies. I tried not to stare, but damn. The only thing I didn't see was Dana. The instructor came up. He was one of those thin, hairy, almost androgynous types with very long hair and a beard. I couldn't remember his damn name to save my life, but when Dana and I talked about him, I always called him Jesus. "Eric, Dana is in the office getting one-on-one lessons from the guru," he said with what sounded like respect or perhaps desire. He looked at me like we were friends or something, like I could actually be friends with a long-haired yoga monkey who hates my cars, only eats vegetables, and rides his bike everywhere. "Keep this between us," he whispered. "Dana is trying really hard to fit in, but this is a very advanced class, and she's not really at that level yet. So instead of disrupting the class, the guru gives her extra lessons to help her catch up with us while we do more difficult poses." "I won't say anything," I lied, intent on getting my guts out as soon as possible, hoping to get her to quit smoking and go to a yoga studio where she could keep her damn clothes on. He pointed to the door behind. Just before I got there, my phone vibrated and told me I had a message. I looked at him as soon as I approached the door. It was from my mother-in-law, who told me which room my father-in-law was in. I opened the door and everything caught fire. Luckily, I still had my phone in my hand. With 2 taps, I put my iPhone into HD video mode and started recording. There she was, my wife, the plump love of my life, doing a really difficult yoga pose with an older Indian guy. They both strove for nirvana until my loud, cold words broke the spell and deprived them of bliss. "Hi, guys," I said that the door needed to be opened wide enough so that all the yoga students in the class could see what was happening. Their eyes widened, expressing surprise and more. "What yoga pose is this?" They quickly tried to move away from each other, and in doing so the guru pressed too hard on Dana's outstretched leg. She screamed and fell heavily to the floor, writhing in pain. He looked at me and at the shocked faces of all the yoga students in the open door. Dana, even through the pain, had the presence of mind to try to get out of it with lies. "Eric, baby," she moaned, "it's not what you think." "What is this, then?" I growled. I mean, I'm probably no expert, but it felt more like sex than yoga. "Eric, I know you don't look good, but what you think you saw, you didn't see," said the guru, a balding, middle-aged Indian man I had met a couple of times before. "Oh my gosh, he's quoting Will Smith," I said. He looked confused, and that confusion was still on his face when I walked up to him. Realizing his danger and my irritation, the guru jumped back, landing on the balls of his feet in a pose reminiscent of a karateka. When my fist hit his face, his neck bent back to absorb the impact and his body followed his head. The guru fell heavily and spat out a couple of teeth. My hand hurt so much that I never wanted to hit anything again. As I turned to leave, I stopped halfway and turned back to Dana, who was moaning on the floor, clutching her thigh. "Eric, I'm sorry, honey," she whined. "Eric, my leg really hurts. I think I need to go to the hospital." "Great," I snorted. "That's where I followed you. While you were having sex with that charlatan, your dad had a heart attack." The shock on her face doubled. I started walking towards the door again. "Eric, wait," she whined. "Are you still going to the hospital? I'll go with you. I can't drive with my legs like that. I can't even move it." I turned to her again. "Dana, remember when I bought my new Mustang? You were afraid that I would use the car to pick up women, like I was having a midlife crisis. You made me make you a solemn promise. What was that?" I scratched my head as if trying to remember. "Oh yeah," I said. "You made me promise that no slutty woman would ever get into my car, and given the current circumstances, I'm afraid I can't offer you a seat." When I finally left the room, I noticed that less than 5 minutes had passed. In less than 300 seconds, I went from a happily married man to an unhappy, soon-to-be divorced guy. I was so lost in my grief that I did not notice Jesus and one of the guru's disciples on my way. "I called the police," he said proudly. "You can't leave." "Yeah," said another bearded hipster behind him. This one was covered in tattoos and wore glasses. "Listen, Jesus," I said. "I'm sure you're not only committed to that crap out there, but you're also a conscious, modern, enlightened person who cares about the good of the planet and humanity." He smiled and nodded to the other guy, thinking I was praising him. "But if you don't get your bearded, vegetarian ass out of my way, I'll show you the other side of this world so you won't be able to get home." "This is how you Neanderthals always resolve conflicts," said the tattooed guy. "You always resort to violence." I quickly but carefully removed his glasses and placed them on the floor next to him. His scream was louder than the guru's scream. He knelt down and looked for his glasses. Jesus wisely got out of the way. Unfortunately, a terrifying crunch was heard as his foot touched what he thought was the floor. "Don't tell me you stepped on my damn glasses," shouted his angry, almost blind friend. "I'm sorry," Jesus said sincerely. As I walked through the reception, the tranquility of the studio was shattered. Indira fought off a group of angry customers who were all demanding their money back. It took me 10 minutes to get to the hospital and 5 minutes to find my mother-in-law. She looked like she was barely hanging on. It was as if she only needed to be strong long enough for someone else to come and take on the burden. As soon as I hugged her, she fell apart and started crying. "He had to put a stent in one of his arteries," she sobbed. "That's it. Now he's officially going to be a vegetarian. No more fried food for him." No more barbecue and beer. No cutlets, no chips, no sauces, no snacks. None of that unhealthy stuff. I squeezed it and nodded. Better wait until he's fully recovered before telling him that, I smiled. Why? She asked. It doesn't really matter what he thinks. I'm determined. Yes, but when he finds out he can't eat all his favorite things, he'll wish he'd never lived. Where is Dana? She asked. She was at yoga, I told the truth. I told her what happened, and then I came here to be with you. I'm sure she's already here or on her way. You're a good son-in-law, Eric, she said, hugging me. About half an hour later, the surgeon came and told us that everything was fine. My father-in-law will make a full recovery and, with some strict dietary restrictions and gentle exercise, will be able to live a long, fulfilling life. She suggested that he should stay away from work for 3 weeks to a month, longer if his job involved physical activity. At this point, my mother-in-law started asking her questions, and the surgeon looked annoyed. She took off her surgical cap and mask, and I recognized her. She was a beautiful but aged Indian woman whom I had seen a couple of times before. I just couldn't remember where. After the surgeon left, my mother-in-law and I went up to the room. We were there for about 10 minutes when Dana was wheeled into the room in a wheelchair. Like Dad? She asked. What the hell happened to you? Asked her mother. Dana looked at me pleadingly before answering. I pulled my upper thigh muscles in yoga, she said. Like Dad? Her mother told Dana about her father's condition, but Dana didn't take her eyes off me. I was racking my brain trying to figure out how to get out of there. How was the car show? Dana asked uncertainty. I couldn't go, I replied. Your mom called me, and some things are just more important.
Hey, you always put family first, Dana said. You can forgive people for anything. Sometimes things just happen, and we have to stick together and move on. As long as we stick together and forgive each other, everything will be great.
Dana, what are you talking about? Asked her mother. Eric knows your dad wasn't going to have a heart attack to stop him from attending the car show. No one owes anyone forgiveness. You're not speaking clearly. Dana looked stupid, trying to find a way to explain what she said. Then I saw my way out. Dana, with your leg, you won't be able to pick up Erica from the mall. I'd better go and pick her up, I said. You two can pick me up later, she said. It will be better if you go home with Mom, I said. She shouldn't be alone at a time like this. I'll call you later. I hugged her mom again and walked away as if my back was on fire. I drove to the mall and waited in the parking lot. I didn't know when Erica and her friend would be ready to leave. I texted her and told her to let her know when she was ready to leave. I sat in the car and searched my phone for divorce lawyers. Then the pain of what happened came to me. Up until this point, I was just pushing through it, trying to move forward, so it didn't really hit me that hard. Sitting around and thinking, the heartache deepened. In some ways, my father-in-law and I have a lot in common. Maybe not in the physical sense, but in the metaphorical sense, we were on parallel courses. We both started the day like happy married men, and around the same time, our hearts were almost broken with life-altering consequences. His heart problems were physical. Mine were emotional. He will have to change his lifestyle if he wants to survive. My lifestyle will also change. He will have to get used to a healthy diet and become more active. I will have to make decisions too. For both of us, this day marked the end of innocence. He will wake up realizing that he can no longer eat and drink whatever he wants without consequences. I now realized that the woman I loved with all my heart had betrayed me. My father-in-law may decide to never eat fatty foods again. I need to decide if I can even run into Dana again. Just remembering her face and smile, it seemed unlikely that I would want to sleep with her again. In fact, when I thought about Dana, she was no longer the woman I loved. I thought of it the same way as a problem at work. I saw it in terms of what I needed to do to make the problem go away with minimal loss and side problems for me. I just felt empty. It felt like the place where my heart used to be was now empty. or perhaps the heart that used to fill this space has simply stopped beating. As I scrolled through my iPhone screen, the number of lawyers and law firms was ridiculous. How the hell do I choose one? I was getting sick of the prospect of making a list and making appointments with 5 or 6 of them, driving around meeting them. Then the realization came to me. The reason there were so many divorce lawyers listed was because there were so many divorces. I wasn't special. I was just another statistic. The world at large will not stop because I want to end my marriage. Hell, the world won't even slow down. The truth is, the world won't even know about my upcoming divorce and won't care anyway. I'll just become another unhappy divorced guy. There are millions of them in our country. One more, one less, it doesn't matter. My phone rang while I was sitting there. I answered, thinking it was Erica. "Eric, honey, I'm so sorry," Dana whined. "Please forgive me. I don't know how it happened, but I swear it won't happen again." I was silent. The silence over the crystal clear connection was deafening. I could hear her breathing. I swear I could hear her heart beating. "Dana, was this the first time?" I asked. "Not really," she sobbed. "This isn't even the first time with him, right?" I asked. She took a deep breath, and I got my answer. "Honey, it doesn't mean anything," she said. "It's nothing. It was just an experience. Just a way to try something new and fill time." "No, Dana, that means something," I said. "It means that the woman I married is a cheater. This means we probably won't be together for a long time." My heart must have been beating so loud that my mother could hear it. Pain rushed through me. I've never been hit in the stomach, but this must feel similar. I could barely breathe and felt like I was going to throw up. "What's wrong?" asked my mother. I didn't want her to know what was going on. I didn't understand this myself. "Nothing, Mom," I lied. "Eric and I were just talking about how lucky we are that Dad is okay." I tried to call him again 2 hours later. He didn't answer his phone or his home phone. In desperation, I called my daughter Erica. "What?" she said, answering the phone. "That's not how they answer the phone, young lady," I said. "Oh, hi, Mom," she said. "I was tired after all the swimming and then all the walking around the mall." "Where is your father?" I asked. "He's outside washing his car and talking to himself," she said. Even at 10 years old, there was concern in her voice. "I don't think he feels well." "Can you ask him to answer the phone?" I asked. "Mom, you know how he reacts when he washes his cars. I'll tell him to call you when he's done." "Bye," she said, hanging up. I was so angry. The problem is that Eric spoiled the girl to the point where she simply did whatever she wanted without fear of consequences. I sat by the phone, waiting and hoping that it would ring. My injured leg began to throb. I took painkillers and passed out. When I woke up the next morning, the house was empty. My leg hurt terribly. I immediately understood where I was and why. The painkillers probably took a lot longer to put me to sleep than I expected, because the sun was already up, and it must have been early morning. Suddenly, I felt a chill run down my spine. I had no idea where my mother was or where Eric was. I assumed that Eric had probably missed his morning run and would blame me for it too. I dialed his number, and it went straight to voicemail. This scared the crap out of me because I knew Eric had pulled a really nasty trick on his phone. Eric's phone usually rang several times before it went to voicemail to give him a chance to answer even if he was busy. If the call went straight to voicemail, it meant the number was blocked. It also meant that I could leave as many messages as I wanted, but they would all be deleted immediately and Eric would never know I called. I called my daughter again. Her phone rang for a long time before she finally answered, and I could tell she was angry. "Yes, Mom," she said in such a cold tone that it belongs in the refrigerator. "Erica, where are you?" I asked. "Dad took us." "Well, you know Sarah from the swim team and her big sister, who's such a girl, to the movies while he was running around. Then he is going to the hospital to visit his grandfather. Did you know that this grandfather had a heart attack? Anyway, when the movie ends, Sarah's mom will pick us up, and Dad will pick me up from Sarah's house. Bye, Mom." I decided then and there that when this was all over, Erica and I would need to talk. I know all about being a daddy's girl. I was once one of them. But Eric spoiled the girl to such an extent that she seemed to only obey him. And since he always deferred to her, it was like a 10-year-old child was running our house. This morning was a prime example of this. Eric quickly arranged for Eric to have something to do so he could go out and run, but neither of them thought about me. I calmed down after thinking a little. After all, my daughter was 10 years old. I could not expect adult-level care and attention from her. At this age, children tend to think that the world revolves around them, especially when they are as spoiled as my daughter. And Eric, how the hell do I even describe what I did to my husband? It will take a long time to undo what I did, but I was sure that this could be fixed. I took another painkiller and went back to sleep. This became my routine for the next few days. I mostly stayed in bed to let my leg heal. I called my father and talked to him on the phone. It was a very lonely existence, and I got the impression that my mother was angry with me. I needed to find out why, so I asked her. "You never came to the hospital," she exploded. "Eric is here every day. He even brought Erica a few times. He is your father's brother-in-law, but not his blood relative." "Mom, the doctors say that if I strain the muscles around my hip, I may need surgery," I told her. "I promise I'll make it up to Dad, but he'll probably get better faster than me." In desperation, I turned to my best friend, Peggy, for help. I told her everything without hiding anything. The idea was for her to go and talk to Eric on my behalf. "I think you're taking this whole situation too seriously," she said. "I think you need to divorce him. Remember why you married him in the first place. Isn't it because you love him? Hell, divorce him. It will give you the freedom to sit on your butt straight and do whatever you want as long as he supports you." "It won't work," I said. "Eric earns more than me, but not so much that I'm entitled to more alimony." "The first thing you should do is quit your job, you idiot," she said. "Why would you work when he can do it for you?" I looked at her like she was crazy. "Why the hell does he put up with this?" I laughed. "You've lost your touch, girl," she said. "You only married him because you got pregnant in the last month of college. You've been playing this game for too long. You're starting to think this is your real life. You are going to leave him in a couple of years when the child could take care of himself, remember? And by the way, you're lucky. You can cheat this idiot out of child support payments. He loves this child enough to pay the maximum possible child support. And I'm ready. I bet that every time you tell him you need something for the baby, he'll put in overtime and pine away trying to get it. You can just make up things for the baby every time you need something. He'll never know. Men are so stupid. Your child is 10 damn years old, and he still hasn't realized that she's not his child at all. What a fool." She was still laughing when I heard the door downstairs slam shut. "Peggy, shut up," I said. "My mom is home. She doesn't need to know about your stupid ideas." "Why are my ideas stupid?" she asked. "Think about it. If you do as I say, you can have as many men as you want, whenever you want, and you'll have a man to take care of your daughter. What do you have to lose?" "That's it," I exclaimed. "I did something stupid with my yoga teacher. Think about it. Inside the studio, he had all this power and mystery. He seemed larger than life. Everyone there seemed to worship him. And then there was the fact that, you know, I've never been with a man from another country, and you know what else? Eric has been taking care of my daughter since before she was born. He will die before he lets anything happen to her. I don't need anyone else." "What about the whole secret from the yoga guy?" she giggled. As soon as Eric walked into that room, I realized that I had done something stupid. I hesitated. "And what?" she laughed. "It's not funny, Peggy," I said. "Eric loves me. I mean, I'm like his whole world. I offended him greatly. I was wrong. So maybe I should come clean." "Don't do that, fool," she hissed. "If you think this is bad, the guy would never talk to you again if he knew how many times you cheated on him." "What I meant was that I wanted to confess to you, Peggy. I said. I am, she laughed. I already know all your secrets. No, you don't know, I said. The truth is, I love Eric too. Everything has changed over the past 10 years. My needs have changed. I think I've matured. It just took me a while to realize it. And before this happened, I hadn't cheated on him for more than 5 years. Are you fucking kidding me? She was laughing. I mean, he's cute, but he's normal as hell. He's like, Dad. He's my daughter's father, and we both love him, Peggy, I said. I can find guys like him anytime I want, she said. No, Peg, I laughed. You borrow them. They get a piece of you and give nothing in return. Have any of these guys ever hugged you and held you after sex? No, they just go back to their real lives and tell all their friends about the woman they just seduced. If your car breaks down or you get sick, does anyone care? When you're just down, Peggy, you can probably get a lot of guys to entertain you, but who do you have who'll just hold you? Who remembers your birthday? Who loves you, Peggy? For a while, neither of us said anything. Peggy, neither of us can fit into our old cheerleading outfits, I said. For some reason, Eric doesn't see this. He still thinks I'm hot. He gets jealous when other guys even look at me. This man will love me forever. And I just broke his heart over an affair. I'm so stupid. Okay, let's change plans, she said. We need to find a way to get him back to you. A few minutes later, the door slammed again, and my mother shouted that she was back. I see Eric came in, she said. What? I said. He said he was going to bring you some clothes, she said. Left them on the sofa downstairs. Or didn't you have time to talk about clothes? Mom, I would never allow such disrespect for your home, I said. Dana, if you want to give me another grandchild, I wouldn't mind, she said. Erica's already 10 years old. I think it's time. You don't want to wait until all your eggs are dry. Peggy laughed, but suddenly I felt a warmth in my stomach. I knew what I wanted more than anything in the world. I wanted to give Eric the child he deserves. But first I needed to get him back. Peggy and I thought of many plans, but none of them worked. I received messages from him, hoping that my leg would heal, or that he should leave town. Of course, the messages came through my mother or from Erica. As for Erica, I'm not sure how much Eric told her about what was going on, but things between us cooled down. I later found out that my daughter thought I abandoned her because I didn't come home. I didn't have the chance to tell her that I couldn't come home, or that I was using her to keep her father away from us. Peggy and I realized that if I returned home, Eric would leave and everyone would know that something was going on. I know how to get him back, Peggy said excitedly about 2 weeks after Eric's trip out of town. I sat up so quickly that it hurt my leg. How? I screamed. Give me a divorce, she said. I almost hit her. You are crazy? I asked. This is brilliant, she said. It probably won't go far. The guy loves you. He's just mad at you. If he thinks he might lose you forever and lose your child, he'll beg you to drop the divorce suit. On the other hand, if this goes further than we think, you will have to meet with your lawyer and his, and then you will ask for a private meeting face to face. If he refuses to meet face to face, then you will get your lawyer to demand counseling. How do you know so much about divorce? I asked. I went through 4 of them. She grinned. You're lying. You've never been married, I laughed. I didn't say I was, she replied. But I've slept with a lot of married men and caused 4 or 5 divorces. That's how it works. Most of the time, men lose in divorce. That's exactly what I did. I found a guy Peggy knew who had just graduated from law school to apply and act as my lawyer. We assured him that things would not go far. There will be no legal proceedings. But, of course, everything didn't go as I planned. I don't know how it all happened. I don't know why the hell I listened to a woman who had never been married and never loved anyone but herself. But I did. Everything went like an exploding barrel of shit rolling down the hill. Eric was called to work. From the very beginning, I had a bad feeling. We hired a gum-chewing blonde bailiff who was supposed to be a shark. My lawyer was there to videotape it so I could see it. She approached Eric and asked his name. He smiled at her and said his name. She told him that he had received a summons. I saw a tear on his cheek. I think it affected her. I know it affected me. He wiped away a tear and took the envelope she held out. He thanked her and shook his head. She found it interesting. She cheated on me, but she's asking for a divorce, he said. She hugged him, and I got angry. This bitch had to be a shark. She even gave him her business card and told him to call her when he got over it. I was going to strangle her. My lawyer asked for a meeting. Eric's lawyer refused. He wanted to go straight to the judge or to arbitration. My lawyer requested a consultation. Eric refused to attend. My lawyer thought Eric had made a huge mistake. The court agreed and required Eric to attend counseling sessions. Eric categorically refused, and the judge immediately scheduled a hearing on the matter. Peggy and I were almost gleeful in anticipation. My lawyer told me that the judge would force Eric to undergo counseling so we could work out our differences. I was ready to go home. I felt the anticipation of victory. I was sure that in about a week I would be back in my own bed. I knew it would take some time, but eventually Eric and I would work towards having a baby. I almost went somewhere, but it wasn't home. I almost went to jail. I dressed up to show Eric what he could be missing out on. I did my hair and makeup. I wore a dress that Eric liked, and that showed off my figure. Eric walked in, and he looked terrible. I was pretty sure he slept in his clothes and cried for me for weeks. I smelled victory. But I was deceived from the very beginning. My lawyer stood up and began his statements. He seemed nervous, but gained confidence as he spoke. The judge nodded as if he had heard everything my lawyer said at least 50 times this week. He laid out a list of my requirements with consultation and a personal meeting top of mind. He talked about how Eric refused to communicate with me and how I steadfastly refused to divorce. But if the divorce did happen, there were a few very basic needs, including reasonable alimony, child support, and a home. At this moment, the real game began. Eric's lawyer raised his hand like a schoolboy. The judge stopped my lawyer, and Eric's lawyer asked me to come to the bench. The judge allowed it, and I got that same uneasy feeling in my stomach again. The judge looked at me, then at my lawyer, and he looked unhappy. He called us all to his chambers. We sat around a huge table there, waiting for the judge. "Hi, honey," I said to Eric. He pretended not to hear me. Before I could say anything else, the judge came in, and he was angry. He had the biggest cop I've ever seen with him, and he was standing at the door. "What the hell are you trying to pull off, Mr. Piers McCaffrey?" he asked my lawyer. "Why are you in my court pretending to be a lawyer?" I almost died from shock. "Your Honor, I am indeed a lawyer," he said in a hoarse voice. "I graduated in the middle of the bottom of my class and received my diploma last." "But you haven't passed or even attempted to pass the bar exam," the judge shouted. "You should not even use the word court, let alone attempt to practice law in one. You have committed fraud. The bailiff will take you to jail now. You should hire a real lawyer." "And you, miss," he told me, "for attempting to deceive this court." Eric's lawyer then intervened. He told the judge that given the unusual circumstances and the fact that we were not in a courtroom where recordings would not be allowed, he wanted to play the recording for him. "Let's go," said the judge. Eric's lawyer played a recording that I didn't even know existed, but even listening to it, everything became clear. I prepared this trap for myself. It wasn't my mother who slammed the door that day. Eric actually brought me clothes, and he heard everything. He knew everything. When the recording ended, I looked across the table at him. I looked into his eyes and saw nothing. All the love and playfulness that should have been there was gone. "Eric, I began, my voice hesitant. "You don't know everything." "What else do I need to know?" he asked. "You didn't marry me because you loved me. You married me so I could raise someone else's child. And you cheated on me all this time. If I hadn't caught you, you still would have left me as soon as Erica was old enough to take care of myself." "Eric, you don't understand. Of course, it was like that initially, But over time, I knew how bad it looked. "There you go, Dana," he said. "You fooled me. I loved you like there was no tomorrow. I loved our life. Little did I know it was all fake." Unwittingly, he broke my heart, but I knew there was nothing I could do or say to convince him that my feelings had changed. "That's one of the worst things I've ever heard," the judge said. "Young man, I cannot give you back the years you wasted, but I can give you freedom. Your divorce is approved. There is no alimony awarded. And for the first time, I will offer the guilty party a choice. Young lady, would you rather go to jail for fraud or give up your rights to the family home?" he asked. "He can take the house," I said. He nodded. "Eric, I know you probably don't care, but it's going to be hard for me to tell Erica that we're getting a divorce. I'll need time to tell her about you." "Don't do this," he said. "What do you mean?" I asked. "Do you know who her father is?" he asked. "Eric, this was my first time away from home," I said. "I behaved completely uncontrollably. I chose you because you were really cute, and you were. The only one who didn't run away when I told you." "How do you know she's not mine?" he asked. "DNA test 2 years ago when she was in 4th grade," I said. I cried for hours. Then I decided never to tell any of you about it. "She doesn't know, Eric. She loves you. You're the only dad she's ever known. I need time to tell her." "Don't do this," he said again. "It's enough for one of us to be heartbroken and lose everything. I will pay child support and we will share custody. We will alternate weeks." "But why did you?" I started. "I love her too," he said. "She's all I have left. I want her to have the best childhood. We will tell her the truth when she grows up." "Well, what about divorce?" I asked. "Could we?" He just shook his head. "She has a lot of friends whose parents are divorced," he said. "She can handle this easier than." The judge looked at me as if I had just crawled out from under a rock covered in mud. "If I see you in my court again, for any reason, even if you're the plaintiff, you're going to jail. For a very long time," he muttered. I wasn't sure if he was talking to me or to himself. But even as I walked out of the courtroom, the only thing on my mind was to start planning how to get my husband back. Despite how much I hurt him, Eric's love and compassion showed through. His decision to not only continue to be in my daughter's life, but also to pay child support for a child who was not his, spoke volumes. I knew this man better than anyone. I knew that at that moment I was the last person he wanted to talk to, so I decided to give him time and space to get over it before I tried to win him over again. "It was a trap," Peggy hissed as I left the court. "What are you talking about now?" I asked. "I had a few minutes to talk to Mitch in his cell," she said. "He thinks it was a trap. Eric and his lawyer planned it all. Think about it. Why didn't he file for divorce? He already had all the evidence he used to pin you against the wall. So why did he wait? Because deep down he still loved me, and he wasn't sure he wanted a divorce," I said. "No, honey," she said. "He still loves your child. It is named after him. He cut her umbilical cord. He was waiting for you to file for divorce so you would have to pay legal fees. Besides, that tape of him. You heard the lawyer. In open court or in a normal divorce proceeding, they would never be able to use it. So he denied every request and meeting until the court got angry and called him to a hearing where the judge could agree to listen to the damn tape. Mitch had just graduated, but Eric's lawyer taught him. I've never heard of a divorce case like this. The guy got everything he wanted. He got the house, he doesn't have to pay you a dime, and he gets the baby half the time, and she's not even his. Over the next few weeks, things only got worse. I had to tell my parents that Eric and I were getting a divorce. Eric insisted on two things. The first was that I had to tell them the truth about why we broke up, and the second thing is that I can't tell them that Erica is not his. He was sure that sooner or later one of them would spill the beans and it would hurt her. My father looked at me as if he was disappointed in me, but he hugged me and told me to learn from the experience and do it right next time. My mother hit me and burst into tears. "What the hell is next time?" she said. "Dana, You are 35 years old. Men your age want younger. Men older than you just want a piece on the side. If they're worth anything, they're already married. And if they are not married, they are either divorced and damaged by it, or they are not the type of man a woman wants to marry. Most of them either already have children or don't want them. You. She just stood there, looking at me with her mouth open, like she was having a heart attack. What, Mom? I asked. Eric, she said. What about him? I asked. Is he okay? Dana. He knew you did this to him. He should have been crushed. The whole time you were together, he told everyone how beautiful you were and how happy he was to have you. She said, everyone is tired of hearing this. I'm never tired, I said. Dana, get your head out of your ass for once, she hissed at me. He must have been shocked by what you did, but he came to the hospital every day to visit your father. He sat there and talked to us, pretending that everything was fine. He brought Erica. He took your dad home, and yet he never. Mom then cried, and even Dad looked at me angrily. Dana, he went through all this pain alone, she exclaimed. It must have been terrible. He was so kind to us. And Erica was as happy as ever. I don't think even she had any idea how much pain he was in. He never said a single bad word about you. He kept making excuses for why you weren't there. All the time you sat at home pretending your leg hurt because you were afraid we'd find out. My leg was hurt, I said. It was a serious injury. I don't think any of them believed me. Then I realized that in addition to destroying my marriage, I had seriously damaged my relationship with my parents. I stayed with them until I found an apartment and things got better. In fact, the very next day they felt worse. I had just returned home from work when my mother handed me the phone. She handed it to me as if she were holding a still wet turd. Dana, I really need your help, he said. My heart stopped beating as soon as I heard the voice. I recognized it immediately. What the hell do you want? I spat. Haven't you already cost me enough? I need you to call your husband, he said. He's ruining my life. Welcome to the club, I said. I'm already divorced and my parents can barely see me. My daughter thinks I abandoned her and my husband won't even talk to me. I wish more than anything I could just tell him how sorry I am. Yes, but I didn't even understand that. Look, what happened between us was just the straw that broke the camel's back. But I can't help you. Out of curiosity, what is he doing? My yoga studio has closed, he complained. The day your husband came and caught us, all the students who were there left, and they told others. Somehow it ended up on Facebook and soon everyone knew. Even my instructors began to think of me as a fraud. You must be licensed to teach yoga. Because of all these complaints, I lost my accreditation, and to make matters worse, your husband is suing me for ruining your marriage. I laughed at this. I was actually pleased that Eric thought losing me was worth taking someone to court. From what I've been told, this type of lawsuit rarely produces any monetary reward, I said. It's not about the money. He's suing me for only $25. But being served at home means my wife found out, and now my marriage is in jeopardy. And every time there's a lawsuit, it causes me problems. When this case was mentioned in newspapers and social media, my name was mentioned, and it was mentioned that I am the husband of a famous heart surgeon, and my wife's name was also mentioned. This nonsense damages her reputation and costs her patients dearly, because no one wants to be operated on by a doctor with serious emotional disturbances. My wife's lawyers are offering him all kinds of money to drop the lawsuit and let this story die, but he won't even agree to meet with them. He seems to be in a lot of pain and just wants to destroy the world to make himself feel better. He acts like a man who has lost everything and just wants to hurt everyone else. Suddenly, I felt even worse. I didn't feel sorry for him. He was an adult and should have understood the risks we faced. But I felt sorry for his wife. She didn't deserve to have her career and reputation ruined because of her husband's actions. And their children didn't deserve to have their home life ruined, and her patients deserved a great doctor, and you can tell from my father that she was a great doctor. I don't promise anything, I said, but I'll make one phone call. Are you calling your husband? He asked, the relief in his voice obvious even over the phone. No, I said. He doesn't pick up my calls, but I'm calling someone who listens. A few minutes later, I dialed the number, and it was picked up. What now, Mom? She said. Dad is taking me and my friends to Coldstone. Frankly, for an older woman, she was beautiful. She had skin the color of creamy coffee, like many Indian women. Her deep brown eyes shone with intelligence and life, but there was sadness in them. French fries are not good for your heart, she began the conversation. I run a lot, so I can afford it, I replied. What's your 5K record? She asked. 5:30 p.m., I said proudly. Wow, you're fast, she said admiringly. Even in college, I couldn't run under 20 minutes. Her smile, despite her pain and the lousy situation we were in, proved what kind of person she was. I liked her immediately, and the fact that I actually liked her made me feel small for what happened and how I reacted to it. I should have thought better about my actions. At that moment, I realized that I was punishing the victims along with the perpetrators. This woman was no more to blame for our spouse's actions than I was, but she was again a victim. How can I help you, doctor? I asked, and it was sincere. Let me help you, she said. I know you are suffering. Me too. I will drop the lawsuit, the newspaper coverage, the entire social campaign. Everything, I said. How much will it cost me? She smiled. I have already offered your lawyers $500,000. I can't afford any more. We both knew she could. We also knew that she would make a lot more money after things settled down, but again, it wasn't her fault. How's your divorce going? I asked. We have 6 children, she smiled. We also have an old-fashioned marriage. There will be no divorce. Why do you ask? I smiled back. There was a strong attraction between us, and I was sure that she felt it. Her next statement confirmed this. If you're thinking what I'm thinking, it must be very secret, she said. It would also make us no better than them, I said. It's a shame we're better than the people we married. How much money does your husband have? I asked. I don't want a penny from you, but I want to hurt him. He probably has $150,000 left over from the dowry he received from my parents, and a little over 2 years of rent paid on a yoga studio that is now closed. He thinks he can make a small profit by renting it out. I already told him that he can't leave the house anymore. Now he is a housewife. His job is to take care of the children and our home. That's what I want, I said. 150,000 and a yoga studio. But I offered you 3 times as much, she laughed. You're not yourself. I did it to hurt him, I said. I never meant to hurt you. This way I can take a big piece of his pride. But you have to promise me that you won't replace his money. Oh, I'd like to hurt him a little too, she said. Except for money for the household, I won't give him a penny. So I became the owner of a closed yoga studio. Since I have a great job and almost no debt, the money was an unexpected gift. I bought the one thing I'd always wanted and put the rest of the money toward a college fund for Erica. The thing I bought for myself was a 2003 SVT Cobra convertible. I had always wanted a Terminator, and now I had one sitting in my garage. Now I only had 2 cars left on my dream list, a '67 Fastback and a 2014 Shelby GT 500. My father-in-law and mother-in-law didn't understand the passion for cars, but they were happy to see that it made me happy. They liked that I was planning for my daughter's future, although I felt some sadness from my mother-in-law. I asked her about this later. It's just hard to accept that I'll only have one grandchild, she said sadly. Is there absolutely no way? I hugged her and shook my head. She never loved me, I said sadly. If we didn't have Erica, she wouldn't have married me. I was too boring for her. Eric, you need to talk to her, she said. Her feelings for you have changed over the years. By the end, she loved you, and she's unhappy without you. I think she's just gotten used to me, I said. I was like an old pair of shoes to her. This is not the love I want. but she will find someone else. And maybe you can still have more grandchildren. Over the next few weeks, I focused on two things. I focused on work and making the transition into our new life as easy as possible for Erica. The fact that she was not my biological child did not matter to me. I decided that this fact was just another one of Dana's sins and had nothing to do with Erica or me. Erica was my baby from the day she was born. Since she was born while we were married, she was my baby in the eyes of the law, and she will be my little girl until the day she turns 18 and can make her own choice. The first week went smoothly. Erica and I did basically what she wanted. I took her to school a little early so I could get to work on time, and we signed her up for a couple of after-school activities so I could pick her up after work. When we got home, we would cook dinner together. Then she would do her homework while I worked on my cars or working out. We ended the evening talking or watching TV together. Neither of us brought up the elephant that wasn't in the room. I think we both knew it was too early and too painful. The second week was supposed to be Dana's turn, but she hadn't found a spot yet. It wasn't hard for me to have Erica again, and the third week was still mine. But it wasn't until the fourth week that Erica started speaking badly about her mother. I didn't think it was great, so I got involved. I went to visit her grandparents with a proposal. "Listen, Mrs.," I began, and her face showed offense. "Eric, you've never called me anything other than Nancy or Mom in the last 10 years. What's changed?" she asked. "I'm not your son-in-law anymore," I replied, shrugging. "Who said that?" she asked. "What is your idea?" "Erica is starting to get angry about Dana's absence," I said. "I know she hasn't found a place yet, and for some reason she doesn't want Erica here. So I would like her to use the house next week so she can have her turn." She hugged me. "Honey, that's a great idea," she said. "Where will you stay?" "I'll rent a room at one of the motels near work for a week," I said. "Oh no," she said. "You can stay in the guest room upstairs. There's some rabble in these motels." So I stayed with my mother-in-law and father-in-law for a week. On Saturday night, I invited them to dinner as a sign of gratitude. On Sunday morning, I went to pick up the house. I arranged for Erica to go to an amusement park with friends. Her friend's mom drove them there and then stayed with them until I arrived after my run and shower. I brought them back home for dinner, and their parents picked them up from our house. I was sure the girls would want to leave the park quite early. They were only 10 and 11 years old. They went on rides, played games, and then got bored and wanted something else. I also knew my daughter wanted to show off our pool, so I was shocked when I returned home early in the morning after my run. The house was in terrible condition. My 10-year-old daughter tried to clean it up. She looked at me and shook her head. I did my part, and we got the house in a presentable condition. Then Erica's favorite outfit went into the wash. Thank God for express cleaning of small loads. I was just getting her clothes out of the dryer when Pam's mom called and said she was on her way. "I missed you so much, Daddy," Erica said, hugging me goodbye. I went up to my room to change into my running clothes. My room was a spectacle. There were crumpled up pieces of paper everywhere, and Dana was curled up with a pillow on my bed. There was an open bottle of alcohol on the bedside table. When I opened the box, she stirred in her sleep. I quickly grabbed my shorts and top. I threw my sneakers over my shoulder and left the room. I changed clothes in the kitchen and went to the park. When I got to the park, my phone rang. It was her. "Hi, Dana," I said. "Erica's gone," she said. I explained everything to her, trying to remain as calm and unemotional as possible. "Oh," she said, "you're really good at this single-parent thing. I need to get my act together." "It's easy for me," I said. She loves you more," she cried. "I understand. I'm a bitch who destroyed my family. Have you ever thought that you feel better because you have this damn house?" For a while, neither of us said anything. Then I heard the sound of her sobbing. "I didn't mean to say any of this," I told her. "I was going to say it's easy for me because she's all I have. You have a big family, Dana. I was an only child. My parents died before we met. I'm obsessed with Erica because she's the only person I should care about. Her gasp of pain could be heard over the phone line. I'm so sorry, Eric, she croaked. I just don't deal with it very well. I might already have a place to live, but I don't need some kind of apartment or rented house. I want my damn house that I chose and you paid for it. But that's not even right. When I first came here, I walked around and looked at everything. Except for some of my personal belongings, nothing had been moved, but it seemed empty. Without you, home means nothing. I want my house back. I want my family back. I want my husband back. Do you know what I saw last week? I saw that little Indian weasel that caused all this. He and his wife and all their damn kids went for a walk in the park together. He tried to take his wife's hand, but she moved away from him. But at least they're working on it together. Their family, their marriage is still together. Why not mine? This is unfair. Dana, I don't have all the answers, I said. I have to run so I can pick up Erica from the carnival in time. Okay, Eric, she said. Do you think we could ever, you know, talk about? Someday, I said. But not now. It's still too early. I'm not strong enough to deal with these feelings yet. Bye, Dana. Everything I told her was true, but it was only half of what was in my heart. I also faced my own problems with our situation. There was anger in me that was not there before. I hated Dana for what she did to me. We were married for 10 damn years, and it was a lie the entire time. She looked me in the eyes every day and lied to me, and I had absolutely no way of knowing how many times she cheated on me. I was so angry I just couldn't control it. And this anger was not only directed at Dana. With the exception of my daughter and my mother-in-law, I simply didn't trust women. Of course, I could be polite in work situations. I could even carry on small conversations with Erica's teachers and her friends' mothers, but I just didn't trust them as far as I could throw at them. I knew my feelings were unhealthy. I saw a counselor, and he told me that given what I had been through, my behavior was normal. I needed a healthy way to release my anger. I reached out to some guys I knew who had gone through divorces. They all told me that the anger would go away with time. I began to wonder how long it would take and what things they did to cope with their anger. I decided that maybe a support group of some sort might be a good idea, so I called a few of my divorced friends, and I asked each of these guys details about why they got divorced and asked them to name another guy they knew who also got divorced. I narrowed the list down to those who got divorced because of infidelity. I didn't include guys who got divorced because they cheated. These scoundrels deserved what they got. I also included a few guys who were dumped or separated from their lovers before they could get married. If they loved the woman they were with, they were just as unhappy. Once I had a list, I invited them all to my house to talk. I ordered catering from a bar nearby. We had plenty of snacks and craft beer. There was also a grill station where everyone could cook their own meat. 15 guys came. We had one large group session where everyone told their stories and several small group sessions where we discussed issues specific to divorced guys. I noticed one thing about the guys I invited. There were a lot of really cool cars on my street. There were also trucks, motorcycles, and vehicles that were a combination of motorcycles and cars. I thought everything went great, and it looks like I wasn't the only one. A big guy named Bill Peck, who was betrayed by his childhood girlfriend after 23 years of marriage, asked a question that many guys wondered. Eric, I enjoyed meeting you, he said. It was great to hang out with guys who understand what I'm going through. When is the next meeting? I'll call you all and let you know, I said. Over the next few days, almost every guy who was there called me with ideas and plans. Over the next few weeks, we created an organization that was part support group, part social club, and part family. Our third event was a tour of my empty yoga studio, which I proposed to become our clubhouse. We had several members who were contractors. They volunteered time and materials, and we cleaned out the inside and outside of the building. The new decor was very masculine-oriented. There was a huge bar. There was a large screen on every wall and plenty of seating throughout. The back room contained a gym and several punching bags of varying sizes. This way, if a guy was having a bad day, he could just come here and take his feelings out by hitting something. We also had lockers and showers left over from the yoga studio. I had an idea to sometimes run from the club. The funniest moment was when they installed the club sign. Some guys were outraged when the letters BBC were attached to the building. "Hey," one guy said, "that's how I lost my wife." "I already have one of those," said one of the black guys in the club, "and it didn't do me any good." "Remember when we were younger," I said. "They had a IMCA and they had a boys' club. Welcome to the Broken Hearts Club." The club started strong. We had to limit membership to those who were truly affected by divorces or relationships. Too many guys wanted to join in after seeing all the cars and motorcycles parked outside. Even funnier were the women who saw the sign from the front and misunderstood its meaning. One of our members, a huge black guy named Will, was an expert at blowing them off. The club took on a life of its own. We went on trips. We did all sorts of activities. We had parties, and some of those parties were wild. We had showgirls. We went to Vegas. We did everything you could imagine men doing. But we all basically hated women, and in particular, our ex-wives. Until one day, I had a day off on Saturday. Erica was with Dana, and I was at the club. In fact, I was washing my car behind the club when she came up to me and handed me one of my microfiber clothes. "Thank you," I said inattentively. "You're welcome," she smiled. As soon as I heard her voice, my head turned sharply. "Oh, I need your help," she said. "I've never seen sparkling brown eyes. I have heard of warm brown eyes and intense brown eyes. I've heard of brown eyes that were so dark they looked black. Butcher's sparkled. And it wasn't just in her eyes. Her voice sounded magical. She had one of those voices that sounds hoarse and hoarse, but melodic at the same time. Perhaps the best way to describe it is to say that she sounded like Stevie Nicks singing. It was the same tone, but the emphasis was different. It was one of those soft Southern accents that drove me crazy. It wasn't that annoying hillbilly accent or that ineffable Cajun accent from Louisiana. It gave everything she said a very slight, very sexy edge. As I stood there, staring at her almost until it became impolite, everything went wrong. Nothing that was in it made sense. Her legs were too long, and her jeans were full in the back, but her hips were pretty narrow. It felt like God was playing a joke on me. Think about it. She had the best of both worlds. She had a round, full butt that you wanted to squeeze, but at the same time, she didn't have that super wide, Kardashian-style hour-long figure that was 2 hamburgers away from being fat. Her upper body was the same. She had very narrow shoulders, but the way her built Ford Tough t-shirt jutted out from her ribs made it look like she was probably wearing a Ford Tough bra underneath, hiding some very firm breasts. But what really struck me was her heart-shaped face under her thick head of honey blonde hair. I've already described her incredible sparkling brown eyes, so I'll skip them. I'll also skip her nose because it wasn't very noticeable. But her full lips, shaped like a Cupid's bow, seemed capable of instantly moving from a smile to sadness and to other expressions that were unique to her. My emotional side seemed ready to say, "Whatever you want, it's yours." Unfortunately, my head was in control, and what it was thinking came out, filtered through recent events and my broken heart. My mind seemed to say, all women are evil, and this one is probably even more evil because she is so damn beautiful that it is difficult to look at her. So when my mouth finally closed enough to start speaking, the words that came out were, "Why should I do you a favor?" "Because Nancy told me that her brother-in-law is the sweetest man in the world," she smiled. It was damn hard to keep a straight face, but I knew that inside I was melting. In fact, she won me over with the word always. "What a favor. I mean favor," I said. "I want you to break the rules of this man-hater club and—" She began. "Oh no," I said. "This can't happen. There's no way I can let you." The funny thing was that even as I said it, something in me was looking for a way to do it. Maybe I could sell this as a gender-free club for cheating victims. Maybe I could argue that some federal law says we have to. No, we had too many damn lawyers in the club. There she stood with this little smile, shaking her head. "Not me, Eric," she chuckled. "My dad?" "Did your mother cheat on him?" I exclaimed. "Never," she answered sharply. Her shock at the thought of cheating warmed my heart. "But she kind of lied to him," she added. "That's almost as bad," I said. "Women are natural liars." "Not all are women," she said. Then she told me a story that could be the subject of a Lifetime movie. Her parents were high school sweethearts. They got married and started living together. They had a child. She raised her hand and bowed as she said this, and life seemed wonderful. But then she got cancer and suffered greatly. Her husband quit his job and sold everything he could to pay for her treatment. He stayed close to her from the first day of diagnosis through surgery and chemotherapy to her months-long recovery. But fortunately, she recovered. They were both older and scarred by their trials, but they loved each other more than ever. It took them years to pay off their medical debts, but they did it with joy and restored their lives. Damn, they beat cancer. Nothing could stop them anymore. They rebuilt their savings, paid for their daughter's college education, and began planning for their retirement. But one day, the wife decided that she could not wait. She wanted to take a cruise and tour of Europe, as they had always planned for their retirement. As usual, her husband gave in to her wishes. The cruise was wonderful. It was as if they were young and in love again. While touring Europe, he noticed that his wife was enjoying herself immensely, but was often tired. When he mentioned it, she just smiled and said that maybe she was pregnant. This caused laughter, since they were both over 60. She promised that as soon as they returned to Texas, she would see a doctor. She died in her sleep while he held her hand on their first night home. She left him a letter explaining everything. Her cancer came back with a vengeance. The doctor gave her only 6 months to live, maybe more if she immediately went to the hospital and began treatment. All he could do was try to prolong her life, but he could not save her. In the letter, she asked for forgiveness for not being open with him, but she wanted to die on her own terms. Her doctor respected her wishes and prescribed a variety of painkillers. She felt nothing but love for her husband. She wanted him to continue living and said that she would wait for him in his next life. "My dad is a big, strong man," she said, but he cried for a week. Then he just started thinking. When he collected all his thoughts, he got angry. He decided that my mother had deceived him, and he hated her. I had to try to piece it together, but I think I need help. I need to get him out of the house and introduce him to other guys. I know his pain is not exactly the same as yours, but I think you would be right for each other. I agreed to meet him. A few days later, I went with Will and Barney. We talked to him and fell in love with him. He had no idea that his daughter had arranged all this. He thought it was some kind of recruiting campaign. But we have all suffered enough from women to understand the pain of others, even if the situations and reasons were different. What really convinced him was his truck. He had a huge F-250 Power Stroke, all chrome. It was the biggest and most beautiful truck I had ever seen. "Can you tow a double-car trailer with this thing?" I asked him. "I can drag a damn building with me," he replied, "unless there's a fat woman sitting on it." We were sold, and Tom became a member of the BBC. The club continued to prosper and became increasingly active. We took trips together. We did all sorts of things. About 3 months after Tom joined, I realized we had a problem. We camped in the Upper Peninsula. This is in Michigan, for those not familiar with the term. We wandered off, doing different things in the forest. Some were fishing. Others went hiking, and the rest just hung around the camp, drinking and chatting. I noticed a shine on the ridge above us. I thought someone might be hunting nearby or something worse. It could be the damn environmentalists who wanted to complain about all our cars, trucks, and motorcycles or how we treat pristine nature. So I crept up to the ridge as carefully as possible and snuck up on them. It turned out that it was her. I tapped her on the shoulder, and she dropped the binoculars. "Damn, Eric, you scared the crap out of me," she exclaimed and playfully punched me on the shoulder. Her hand stroked my shoulder, and it felt like the skin on my shoulder was trying to maintain contact with her hand. Her mouth dropped open, and she quickly pulled her hand away as if my shoulder was on fire. "Oh, I forgot. You hate women," she chuckled. "Jenny, what are you doing here?" I asked. "And why are you alone?" "I'm not alone," she said. "Ralph is with me." I couldn't help the wave of jealousy that rushed through me, but then I came to my senses. The look on her face told me that she not only noticed it, but understood it. "You'd have to be a fool to go against Ralph," she said enthusiastically. Looking around, I only saw a very small tent with one sleeping bag. "You must be very close," I said. "We've been sleeping in the same bed since I was about 11 or 12, she chuckled. "Do you want to meet him?" My jealousy reached such a level that I became angry. "No, I just wanted to make sure you were safe," I said. "It must be terrible," she said almost in a whisper. "What?" I said. "Be at war with yourself," she said. "You and my dad are birds of a feather. He still cries for his mom sometimes, but as soon as he wakes up, she goes back to being a cowardly liar. Being with you guys really helps him. You have so much fun that it doesn't give him too much time to think." I remembered this feeling, and I understood what she meant. For most of the guys, the club was like a breath of fresh air. "I'm not like that," I said. "I hardly think about my ex." "No, you're done with all this," she said. "But you are still at war. You're past the time when you could move on, but you want to stay in your little pity party." My mouth fell open, and I stared at her. "You still haven't told me what you and Ralph are doing here," I said, trying to steer the conversation in a different direction. "Eric, my dad is big inside and out, and even approaching 60, he's stronger than an ox," she said sadly. "But none of this can protect him from himself. Don't tell anyone this, but he's come close to joining his mom several times already. As much as he claims to hate her, he misses her terribly." I was shocked. I would never have thought that Tom was capable of suicide. "Jenny, I didn't know what to say. Be careful. Every time someone is heard of missing and found dead, it is always somewhere in the deep woods. That's why we always work in pairs. Where's Ralph?" "In the tent," she grinned. She walked over to her small tent and leaned down. At that moment, I forgot about everything in the world. All I could think about was the sight of her tanned ass sticking up as her shorts rode up. When she turned her head over her shoulder and caught me looking, my face must have turned beet red. "So do you want to meet Ralph, or are you going to stare at my ass all day?" she grinned. "It is said that God only has enough blood for one head, not two." At that moment, all my blood was not in my head, so I didn't even think, I just spoke. "I have a choice," I said. Her smile lit up the forest. "You can be a real charmer when you want," she admired. Then she came closer to me. Then I noticed what she was holding in her hands. "This is Ralph," she said proudly. I burst out laughing. It turns out that Ralph was a 12-gauge shotgun with the barrels cut off. "Anyone who wants to hurt me has to deal with Ralph first," she chuckled. She flashed those sparkling brown eyes again. "Well, at least the ones I don't want around me." "Eric, Iriamik," I heard my name being shouted from the camp. I grabbed her hand and rushed down the path. "What are you doing?" "I don't," she protested. As we ran into camp, my friends looked relieved and then shocked to see Jenny. "What the?" said one. "It's a girl," said another. "It's just my daughter," Tom said. He looked at her with disgust on his face. "Testing me again, huh?" he told her. "I'm fine. You can leave here now that you know I'm okay." "Yeah," I said. "The sun is already starting to set. Do you remember how difficult it was to drive along these trails to get here? She won't do it in the dark. We're leaving in the morning. She'll stay the night." "But what about our gathering around the fire?" asked one. "She's heard bad singing before," I laughed. "What about our, therapy session?" asked another. "I have a couple of classic movies in the car," I said. Her daddy's truck has a DVD player. She will not hear our complaints, and she will be comfortable. I was making a quilt with Tom, Will said. The most logical place for her is to sleep with her father. She has her own tent up there on the ridge, I said, but I think she'll sleep in her dad's truck. I bought extra blankets. She and Ralph will be fine. Who the hell is Ralph? Was the question that ended the conversation as everyone went back to their business. For the rest of the evening, Jenny tried to stay away. The guys mostly ignored her. She stuck close to me or her father, but mostly with me since he was upset by her presence. The next morning, I helped her pack her small tent and sleeping bag into her Ford Fusion. Well, that wasn't so bad, was it? She asked. What? I asked. Being around one of those mean women, she chuckled. She stood in front of me, leaning on her car. Nancy was right. You're really cute. Her daughter is a fool. I could barely contain the urge to kiss her. Be careful on the road, I said, turning away. Still struggling, huh? She laughed. Dana, get up. You're late for work. My mom's voice cut through the fog of my hangover like a shovel digging through a pile of horse manure. You don't have to go to work today, I mumbled. Took a few days off. It was stupid and selfish, Dana, she said. You have Erica next week. You could do it then. My brain was not working well at that moment. Alcohol was still in control. Why can't I just get special treatment for a few days? I screamed. Why can't I just relax and breathe? She answered me immediately. You've been getting this for 10 years, remember? She said. You divorced him, remember? Now you have to work and take care of things like everyone else. I stood up and realized that I was still wearing the clothes I had worn the night before. Dana, you're dressed like a slut and you smell like alcohol, she said. I walked past her and went into the bathroom. Mom, I'm not 20 years old, I said. I'm in my 30s. I can relax and have fun sometimes. I can handle it. It's all part of my plan. Plus, I can't do anything for a year anyway, so I might as well get it out of the system so I don't screw up again. Dana, what are you talking about? She asked. Every article on the internet agrees that it takes a man a year or two to really get over a betrayal. If I try to get Eric back too soon, it will only make him angrier at me. And now, Eric is angry. Did you know he's like the president of some woman-hating club? Yes, I knew, she said. But before this, I never knew why. Everything fell into place. Eric is too good to do something like that without a reason. You cheated on him. I thought that my mother was going to die of a heart attack. The last couple of months haven't been good. My relationship got worse. My parents looked at me like I was a clam. I was just a parasite stuck to the side of the ship, doing nothing but slowing it down and eating away at the hull. My daughter looked at me as if I had abandoned her. I tried to explain to her that Eric was to blame for me leaving the house, and I told her over and over again that I was ready to return as soon as Eric allowed it. I didn't say anything bad about Eric, but at the same time I was tired of hearing how well he was doing without me. If I hear one more time that Dad got a promotion or Dad got a raise, I will scream. Even our old friends avoided me for some reason, and the few who spoke always asked about Eric or told me about meetings with him. Didn't they understand that his absence was killing me? The only person who understood me was Peggy. After her terrible legal advice, she felt so bad that she decided to help me adapt to my new life and eventually get Eric back. Peggy suggested that I let all my wild desires out of the system. Think about it, Dana, she said. You're not cheating on anyone because you're not married. We went out a lot, so many, and I also met a lot of people. This wasn't something planned. It just happened. Peggy said I was still young and needed to get all this wildness out of the system. So after a couple of months, I'm sure it's over. In fact, I don't understand why this started in the first place. Dating my yoga instructor was just a quick and dirty flirtation that never seriously threatened my marriage. I went to the old man, had sex, and returned home to my husband, completely ready for him. Eric was a fool. What we did in bed was so much higher than the animalistic growls and moans that pass for sex for most men. In fact, it was an attempt to find something similar to what was behind all the sex I've been having lately. It was Peggy who made me realize what the difference was. I complained to her about how terrible all the guys we had sex with were. "Damn, Dana, you just sleep with them," she said. "You're not in love with them. They're not in love with you. It's just sex." I suddenly realized that I was looking for what I always had. The reason Eric was so good was because he loved me. He cared whether I enjoyed what we were doing. I'll never find it again. And the fact was that every guy I slept with increased the chances that he was someone who knew Eric. If this had become known, I would never have returned it. As my brain came out of the memories, I realized I had a problem. Mom was right. I had Erica next week, but I promised Peggy I would go to Vegas with her. I also had trouble finding another job. I missed too many days and was late too often, so I was fired. It was also mentioned that my productivity has dropped since the divorce. My head was too full of my problems to notice it. I'll find another job as soon as I get back from Vegas. I will also need to find a place to live. My stay at my parents' house was becoming less and less acceptable, and Eric wasn't willing to let me use the house after I'd left it in disarray twice. When I thought about it, I was actually looking forward to calling him to ask if he could keep Erica for next week, too. I'm sure he'll agree in a second, but he'll insist on sticking to the schedule. This would mean that he would be with her for 3 weeks straight. Even though he wasn't her real father, he really loved her. I felt terrible as soon as I thought about it. Eric loved Erica as much as he once loved me, and it was my fault that we weren't together. Eric loved Erica so much because I convinced him that she was his daughter. But in my defense, I really believed it was true. The girl is very similar to him. Before the school did that damn DNA test, I wasn't sure either. I suffered too. There were times throughout our marriage when I really wanted, and I mean really wanted, to have another child. But I couldn't. What if the new baby doesn't look like Erica at all? I couldn't risk it. If I had this attitude towards sex, I would still be with my husband. I would have my ideal life instead of living with my parents like a loser. I took a deep breath and hoped. "Hello," he said. His voice made me feel better. "Eric, I need your help," I began. "Why ask me? We're not married anymore," he said. His tone was very light-hearted. It was almost as if he didn't love me anymore. "This is about Erica," I said. "You know, our daughter." His tone immediately became warmer. It was as if he was busy with something else, but now I had his full attention. "Eric, I have to leave town next week, so I was wondering if you could take care of her," I asked. "Crap," he said. "I was going on a cruise." "On a cruise," I hissed. I was furious. I literally had no money and my ex was going on a cruise without me. "I have an idea," he said. "I'll call you back." I couldn't believe it. I got the impression that he was going to find someone to take his place on the cruise. It took him about 20 minutes to call me back. "I arranged everything," he said. "Have a nice trip." The more I thought about it, the more I regretted not going on a cruise with him, but he never offered. He knew a cruise was on my bucket list. I was about to say something, but he had already hung up. I called him back. "What, Dana?" he asked. "I just wanted to thank you and tell you I'm sorry you'll miss your cruise," I said. "Erica has a wonderful dad." "I'm taking her on a cruise," he said. "I called her teacher. She can miss 5 days of school, and she'll have fun. Bye, Dana." So the telephone conversation ended, and I was left even more unhappy. I called Peggy to tell her I could go to Vegas with her. "What's going on in Vegas?" she exclaimed. "He comes home for you and ruins your life," I finished for her. "You were the girl who was worried that her ex-husband might recognize some of the guys she slept with," she asked. "So now you'll have guys from a completely different state. Plus, he's your ex-husband, emphasis on the word ex." "But I don't want him to be an ex," I said. "And you know he's going on a cruise? I can't even rent an apartment, and he's going on a cruise without me." "So you're leaving the baby with your parents?" she asked. "No," I sobbed. "He's taking her on a cruise. He didn't plan it, but somehow he arranged it at the last minute. So let's just go to Vegas and have fun," she said. "This will be a lot more fun than just sitting here and being sad because your ex is going on a cruise." "But how are we going to pay for all this?" I asked. "I have a rich friend who throws parties all the time," she said. "It keeps his out-of-town clients happy, but keeps them away from the casino so they can focus on business. He likes to have attractive women at his parties. Trust me, there will be more than two of us there." I had doubts from the very beginning. I called my daughter because I was sure Eric wouldn't want to talk to me. She was too excited to talk to me. She was telling me about a brochure Eric had given her about the ship and the entertainment on board. The more she read to me, the angrier I became. It sounded like my dream vacation trip. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that a cruise could be a great opportunity to reunite with Eric. I called the cruise line Erica told me about. They told me two things. The first was the price for a private cabin on the ship. My head exploded when I heard her. The second thing was worse. Apart from a few unbooked cabins that were reserved by tour groups or clubs, the ship was sold out. This explained to me how Eric had arranged everything so quickly. His woman-hating club apparently booked a block of cabins at a discounted rate. He probably called a few people and moved them around to give himself a larger cabin to share with his daughter. This created another problem for me. Our divorce changed our family in ways I never imagined. I focused on the relationship between Eric and myself, but neglected the one between me and my daughter. As a result, Erica grew closer to her father every day, while she and I grew more distant. I promised to work on this relationship as soon as I returned from Vegas. The problem is that I put off a lot of things until later. I was going to find a job. Later, I was going to rent an apartment. Later, I was going to get Eric back. Later, now I was going to fix my relationship with my daughter. Later, there were a lot of roads ahead. I had no idea why I was so nervous. I explained everything to the guys, and there were no problems. All 40 current club members were on the ship. I was not the only member who brought a guest. There were several of us who brought a guest to share a cabin. I wasn't even the only member who brought two guests. We had a couple of guys who brought a brother or two. I also wasn't the only member who dared to bring a woman. Will brought his mom, and this old black woman was funny. I explained to the guys that I would either have to cancel the trip or take Erica with me. They decided that I should bring my daughter with me. Most of the guys saw her from time to time and played video games with her, a couple of times on one of the huge TVs in the club during our poker nights. The big problem was that I wanted Erica to have fun and experience everything there was to do on a cruise, but she was only 10 years old, and I couldn't let her wander around on her own while I was organizing things at the club. That's why when I was married, everything was so great. What one of us couldn't help our daughter with, the other managed. It may not actually take a village to raise a child, but it does take two parents. In no case did I want to invite Dana with me. I still felt bad just talking to her. My first decision was to invite Erica's grandparents. Nancy liked the idea, but she wasn't sure her husband would like it. His recovery took much longer than expected. Nancy thought a lot of it was in his head. She thought he was afraid to exert himself because he didn't want another heart attack. So he, in her words, sat on his butt, holding his chest. This limited my options, so reluctantly. Okay, maybe not so reluctantly. I asked for a favor. There I stood on the deck of the ship, watching the people coming up the gangplank, wondering where the hell she was. I felt my daughter turn to look at something, but I kept my eyes on the crowd of people boarding. "Are you waiting on the lawn?" I recognized that soft Texas drawl anywhere, but she wasn't talking to me. She was actually talking to Erica. "Jenny," my daughter exclaimed excitedly, "I like your outfit." I turned around and almost fell over the railing. During the flight from Michigan to the coast, my daughter barely let go of my hand and never left my side. All this was new to her. But in the blink of an eye, She turned to a complete stranger and, "Hey, how does she know her name?" Jenny was damn excited. There's no other way to describe it. She was literally covered from head to knees, but still managed to be the sexiest person on the ship. Her outfit was incredible. She was wearing one of those Audrey Hepburn-style pillbox hats with a very sheer veil that seemed to highlight her face rather than hide it. The hat was white. The dress underneath was dark blue. It was very tight and showed off the incredibly graceful curves of her body. A white belt that matched her hat cinched her slender waist. The dress tapered, highlighting her slender hips, prominent backside, and shapely legs. White heels so high they would give her a nosebleed completed the outfit. She grinned at me and shook her head. "You're looking again," she said. I just... I started. I was just worried that you wouldn't be able to do it. "Dad and I got on the plane ahead of yours," she laughed. "We've been gathering here since breakfast. I've already found everything the two of us can do." "Hey, what about me?" Erica said. "I want to have fun too." "I was talking about me and you, honey," Jenny said. "Your dad will have to play with the boys, but if he's really good, maybe we'll let him swim in a whale for once." For the next 4 days, we had nothing but fun. I made sure all my boys had the best time of their lives. I also got to know each of them a little better. But most of my time was spent watching or hanging out with my daughter and Jenny. The three of us found something that felt natural, even though I seemed to be on the losing end of every game or comparison. 2 days before we were due to disembark, my train luckily went completely off the rails into unknown and unexpected territory. Erica and Jenny were going to one of the pools on board the ship. Erica tried to teach Jenny to swim better. Jenny swore that in exchange, she would teach Erica how to ride a horse when we got home. I got to judge our club's first annual diving, water tricks, and belly flop competitions. The problem was that after the first dive, the 8 competitors decided to call it a tie and instead move on to the first annual beer drinking competition that afternoon. Not needing a judge, I went to the pool to watch my daughter teach a grown woman how to swim. I settled into a lounge chair next to a guy I'd seen enough times on the ship to strike up a conversation with. He was there with another group and seemed friendly. He was one of those chubby party animals who thought that because people thought he was funny, he must be God's gift to women. "Man, this girl just needs to stop teasing me. Bring that sizable body over here and get what she needs," he said. I just looked at him. "Who?" asked one if he had friends sitting on the other side of him. "Right there," he said. "A little girl with long brown hair. You can tell she's hiding her outrageous body under that swimsuit. She wants me. She keeps bending over and sticking her tits right in front of me." I sat down and looked at him seriously. "If you guys weren't here, she'd probably already be sucking my..." Before my brain could process what I was doing, I stood up, threw my fist back, and was about to throw the hardest punch I could. Ever quit. My anger was off the charts. Fortunately, the blow never reached its target. A giant fist held my hand. I turned around and saw Tom. "Aha, I see that I arrived here just in time," he said. "And this shit has nothing to do with what I wanted to talk about." "What's happened?" said the plump comedian. "Do you know her or something? I thought you guys were from that club. You know guys who hate women." Apparently, it was not his day. As soon as he said gay club, Tom turned around and hit him in the mouth so hard that the chair he was sitting on collapsed under him and folded. His friend instantly surrendered, raising both hands in the universal gesture. "He foresaw this," said Tom. "No arguing," his friend said quickly. In less than a minute, there were already people around us. 2 crew members came over to see what was happening. "His chair just collapsed spontaneously," I lied, although he was a little drunk. "Don't worry, Commodore. You and the Admiral return to work. We'll take care of him." The crew members shrugged and left as soon as the guy regained consciousness. "What's happened?" he asked confusedly. "All I said was that they were in a gay club," Plump said. "Nobody cares about things like that." "Except it's not a gay club," Will said. Some people may find this offensive. Oops, I think someone did. I'll buy you a beer and explain. Are you okay? Jenny asked, examining my face for signs of pain or injury. I almost hit the guy, I said. Uh, I'm the one who hit him, Tom said. He didn't let me hit him, I said. It's okay, Eric, she said. You can hit the next one. Damn, Tom said. Why did you almost hit him? She asked. The guy was looking at you, Tom said. I thought it was your job, she winked at me. Jenny, honey, go get ready for dinner, Tom said. Eric and I need to discuss club business. We sat down under an umbrella to talk. Eric, you're a good guy, so I'll be honest with you, he said. I immediately felt uneasy. I love being part of this club, he said, so we need to discuss his future. I immediately started up and became confused. What happens if you, leave? He asked. Or maybe just move on. Why should I do this? I asked. Eric, we sat at the same table for dinner last night, he said. What did Jenny eat? She had spaghetti with that weird sauce and shrimp, I said. What did I eat? He asked. I thought about it. See my point? He asked. Not really, I said. Jenny never wears anything but jeans and t-shirts. As soon as she found out about the cruise, she started buying clothes like they were going out of style, he said. Okay, I said, still not understanding. I'm a big, strong guy, he said, but I'm smart enough not to get in the way of two freight trains about to collide. You know, some things just can't be stopped. He took a long sip of his beer and started talking, but all I saw was Jenny walking up to me and my daughter Erica. Dad, we're tired of eating out, Erica announced. We want to grab something from the buffet and sit on the deck. Okay, I said. I noticed that my daughter is starting to speak with an accent. She began dropping the G at the end of words and stretching out syllables. What were you and my dad talking about? Jenny asked. Are these secret things that only the highest members of the Water Buffalo Lodge can know? I don't know, I said. We talked about what you and he had at dinner. We talked about the club and how you wear jeans and buy a lot of clothes, and then we talked about trains. I need a favor, she smiled. I just nodded. Would you like to ask what it is? She winked. This is important, she said. Okay, I shrugged. What do I need to do? Get dressed and take me dancing, she said. Okay, I said. Erica will probably be asleep before dinner is over. All this swimming has tired her. Ella will be keeping an eye on her. Okay, I said. Yes, she said. Her smile lit up everything around. I've never seen anything like it. I asked Tom and Willie to take care of me during the evening shenanigans. Both seemed proud to take on the responsibility. Where will you be? Tom asked. I swallowed my saliva. His gaze was persistent. I'm, going. Dancing, I said. Damn trains, he muttered. They can't be stopped. Yeah, Willie said, looking as puzzled as I was. 10 minutes later, I was in the shower and changing into a tuxedo. I looked in the mirror and changed my tie. Then he changed his shirt. I chose the black suit for a reason. I had several blue suits, but black somehow felt right. I wore a black shirt and a bright yellow tie for contrast. Swapped the yellow tie for a red bow tie. I felt like James Bond. I needed a vodka martini shaken, not stirred. I was pretty proud of myself. I knew I looked good. I knocked on Jenny's door, and she opened the door before the second knock. "H," she whispered. She's trying to resist sleep. Where are we going? Asked my daughter, barely holding back sleep. I love you, Daddy, she purred as she lay down on the couch. I carried her back to bed. When I turned around, Jenny was looking at me, and all the blood left my head, rushing down. She was stunning. Her little black dress left little to the imagination, but it was her beautiful face that I couldn't take my eyes off. When she smiled at me, I just heard a buzzing in my ears. We didn't dance so much as stand in the center of the dance floor, hugging each other. Sure, we rocked back and forth, but it really was one long, continuous hug. One day, between songs, I got us drinks. I grabbed a glass of chilled white wine for Jenny and a vodka martini for myself, shaken, not stirred. For someone who hates women, you actually feel good about yourself, she said. I feel so warm and safe. And in the middle of her sentence, I rushed out of the ballroom and leaned over the side of the ship. Looking at Jenny, I saw a combination of fear, worry, and laughter on her face. What's wrong? She asked. My drink, I spat. It's horrible. She took a sip and started spitting the taste out of her mouth as well. It tastes like medicine, she said. What is this? Vodka martini, shaken, not stirred, I said proudly. Why did you order this? She asked. I frowned. Eric, you can tell me everything, she said. I ordered this because. I muttered. She smiled at me as if encouraging me to continue. Jenny, being with you makes me do stupid things, I said. I felt like James Bond dressing up for you, so I ordered a James Bond drink, and I'm not a big Travis Tritt fan, but you make me feel 10 feet taller and bulletproof. She put her small hand on my mouth. It would work, she gasped. What? I blurted out. I felt like I was going to lose consciousness. I felt like I was drunk, even though I had only had a sip of that terrible James Bond drink. If you were trying to get in my pants, it would work, she said. We better get back to dancing before I become less of a lady. I took her hand and we went back to the big shiny dance floor. There were probably 1,000 lights, illuminating the room from 100 different directions, but none of them compared to the brightness of those two brown eyes that looked into mine. If we hadn't danced before, it would be even worse now. Our legs didn't even move. We just stood in one place, hugging each other tightly. Eric, I can't breathe, she said. I tried to loosen the hug, but she hugged me tighter. That's not the point, she said. You can hold me as tight as you want, for as long. Hell, for life. But it feels like there's just not enough air in this room. We went out onto the deck under the moonlight. It seemed like there were only the two of us left in the world. Only she and I mattered. Under this huge moon, we were powerless. We were carried away by a current that was both unstoppable and inevitable. It was like the Borg. I heard a voice in the back of my head that was louder than the noise in my ears. He said, Jean-Luc, resistance is futile. And then our lips touched, and time seemed to stop. We were carried away by something bigger than both of us. It seemed as if the world was spinning around us. It was like that scene in Lucy where Scarlett Johansson sits in a chair and watches history happen outside the flow of time. I never wanted this kiss to end, but it did, and something happened. When I caught Dana with her guru and found out what kind of woman she really was, I described it as like going into cardiac arrest. I said I felt empty. I think the word I used was emptiness. From the moment I kissed Jenny, my heart started beating again. It beat louder and stronger than ever. And instead of feeling empty, I felt as if I was so full that I could explode. Jenny, I muttered. Oh, I know. Stupid, she exclaimed. Just shut up and kiss me again. In my mind, I thought this was the perfect moment. I would like to keep this moment on a shelf somewhere so I can return to it during difficult times. But reality intervened. What the hell? Said an angry voice from behind us. Hey damn, it's Eric, said another voice. Some woman is attacking him, added a third. Damn trains, said a voice I recognized. They can't be stopped. In an instant, reality destroyed my perfect moment. In less than a second, I went from being 10 feet tall and impenetrable to being 2 feet tall and covered in dirt. I stood in front of the angry members of my club. Some of them were angry, some were confused, others just looked disappointed. I had no words. But then a small hand was placed in mine, and lightning passed through my veins. I realized then that I didn't need words. The guys at the club were my friends, and real friends understand. True friends will be happy for me. So I resisted the urge to apologize. Damn, I didn't do anything wrong. Guys, we're arriving in the morning, I began. As soon as we return, we will hold a meeting to discuss the future. Until then, Tom and will manage things. Good night." Everyone looked confused and hurt. Will looked at Tom. "For 3 damn days you've been muttering about damn trains," he said. "Is that what you were talking about? Why didn't you just say it in English? We could have stopped it." "How, Will?" Tom asked. "Something this strong. There's just no way to stop it. All you can do is get out of the way." The next morning was strange. It was unusually quiet, like the silence before a storm. I was sure that my club members would try to do something, but when trouble came, it came from a completely different direction. I woke up early. It was stupid. As much as I wanted to stay in bed and relive the dreams of Jenny, I wanted to get up and see her in person. I was delighted when she and my daughter arrived, already packed and ready for breakfast. While many people were sleeping or getting ready to sail, the three of us sat on one of the upper decks and watched with some anxiety as a huge ship, the size of a city, approached the pier. We were constantly on the verge of collision, but the experienced and capable crew handled it amazingly well. We didn't even feel the slightest jolt as the ship stabilized. The sun was high in the sky, and it was afternoon when everything started to go wrong. I remember us walking hand in hand, Jenny holding Erica's left hand and me holding her right, when I felt it. It scared me until I realized what it was. My phone was ringing. "Eric," said the voice. "Where are you? Are you still on the cruise? We have a problem. Big." "Dad's having another seizure," I asked. "Almost there," he said. When I heard his voice, I knew he was okay and that the phone was on speaker. "Eric, is Erica with you?" Nancy asked. "Yes, she's right here," I said. "Make sure she can't hear you," Nancy said. "My phone is not on speaker," I said. "The ship has just docked." "Oh, Jesus, that's good news," Nancy said. "For you, maybe," said her husband. "I wasn't going anywhere anyway. My heart can't stand this anymore." "Eric, how soon can you get to Las Vegas?" she asked. "About 5 hours if we rent a car and drive," I said. "But we could fly in a little over an hour if it's an emergency." "Eric, this is an emergency," she said. "But you can't take Erica with you. This is not what she should see." "Nancy, we already have our return flights booked," I said. "I think I could change my ticket to a later flight and fly to Vegas, and then home from there." "What's going on?" She explained the situation, and I got angry again. "Daddy, why is your face red?" Erica asked. "Jenny, I need a favor," I said. "No," she said. I was dumbfounded. But I did you a favor last night." She put her hand on my lips again. "Last night was the best night ever," she said. "But everything has changed. Friends do favors for each other. But we are far beyond friendship. If you want something, just ask me, and I will do it because I love you." Uo, Daddy, and Jenny are sitting in the tree. Erica sang, "Celuytsy." "I need you to take Erica home," I said. Her face became serious, and she nodded. "I'll call you as soon as I can," I told her. "Eric, I always call you," she laughed. "Do you even know my number?" "Of course," I said. Life must hate me. I woke up again with a huge hangover. This time, though, I knew where I was and why. "You're awake, huh?" asked Peggy. I turned away from her. I didn't need to hear another word from her lying mouth. I was in a cell with about 20 other women. The policeman came in and began to take us one by one to the telephone so that we could make our calls. Some of us had obviously made our calls the night before we were picked up. Those of us who were too drunk were put off until the morning. It was 9 a.m., so it must have been sometime after noon in Michigan. I had the phone in my hands and thought about it. There were only 2 people I could call. If I called my mom, she would be angry. If I had called my husband, my life would have ended. There would be no chance of saving my marriage if I called Eric. I dialed the number and spoke to my mother. I didn't tell her the details. There was no point in giving her additional arguments to use against me. Plus, my mom was a little too friendly with my husband for my liking. If I told her, there was a chance he would find out. The phone rang, and she answered the third ring. "Mom, I have problems," I said. "Dana, you're always in trouble," she said cheerfully. "Mom, I'm in jail," I said. "Well, that's one way to get your own place," she said mockingly. "Mom, this is serious," I said. "Someone needs to come and get me out of here. You can pay the bail with a credit card, but you can't do it over the phone. The bail bondsman is required to show up in person." "What about the bail agent?" she asked. "I don't have money for this," I said. "What have you done?" she asked. "I don't know exactly," I lied. "It's one of those tourist things. You know, the laws vary from state to state. The things we do all the time in Michigan are illegal as hell here." "How much is your bail?" she asked. $2,000, I said. "Oh, so you only need 200 to get out, right?" she asked. "No, Mom," I said. "Because I live in another state, I am considered a flight risk. I need $2,000 to get out." "Where are you exactly?" she asked. I gave her the information. "Let me make a couple of calls and arrange a few things," she said. "This may take a while. You're not going anywhere anyway." Then she hung up. When I returned to the cell, Peggy was waiting for me. "Can you get me out too?" she asked. "Why the hell should I even think about this?" I asked. "Because I'm your best friend," she smiled. "Peggy, you set me up," I said. "I wouldn't be here at all if it weren't for you." "Dana, all I was trying to do was make you have fun." I couldn't figure out which of us was dumber, her for saying it, or me for taking her terrible advice during my divorce. But the truth is that the situation I found myself in was my own fault. The blame for all this, the reason my life became hell, was because of my own belief that I was superior to everything. For some reason, I just never believed that the rules applied to me. I went wild. Many girls do this. Lots of guys, too. For the first time in my life, I was completely responsible for what I did. I was nice, and I took the pills. What could go wrong? Everything was fun until I got pregnant. Then the guys ran away like cockroaches when they turned on the lights. They were all man enough to climb into bed with me, but once things got serious, only Eric remained, and he stood next to me. Perhaps he was a little naive, or hell, maybe just stupid. I think he was both. He also had a little crush on me. The right thing to do would be to be honest with him. I had to tell him I cheated on him, and I wasn't sure whose baby it was. A DNA test during pregnancy or immediately after could save us a lot of pain. And who knows? If he loved me as much as he claimed, perhaps he would have stayed with me anyway. But he never asked for such a test. He just accepted everything as it was and loved us for who we were. This only encouraged me. I probably thought that if I could get away with it that time, I could arrange anything. Eric was not the man of my dreams. I dreamed of big, strong, muscle-covered men who would sweep me off my feet. But he grew in my eyes over the years. We developed good chemistry over time. I was very good at being an obedient wife and rewarded myself for good behavior with casual relationships with other men. I thought I was settled with Eric, and then one day I realized that he was actually not so bad and that it could have been much worse for me. We had the perfect family, until Erica went to school and they did that damn DNA test. Luckily, I never told Eric about the test. It was a spontaneous decision. I searched the entire apartment for anything I could send as a sample. I sent a few hairs from his comb and forgot about it. When the results came back, it took me a while to understand what they meant. I sat looking at the paper and realized the danger it posed to my family. I shredded the paper and then the shredded parts. I then emptied the grinder and burned everything to ash. I then washed all the ashes down the drain with a garden hose. Over the next few years, Eric and I, well, mostly I fell in love. He was already there. We developed a playfulness in our relationship that many other couples didn't have. And then I ruined everything by sleeping with a 50-year-old yoga teacher. Peggy's stupidity only kept the fire going, but it didn't ignite it. I was so immersed in my thoughts during these few hours that I didn't even notice how quickly time flies. I had to be called 3 times, and Peggy had to shake me for me to understand that I was being called. "Your bail has been arranged," said the policeman at the door. "Come with me, we have some paperwork you need to sign. You can go back to Michigan, but if you don't show up for your hearing in 60 days, your bail will be revoked and a warrant will be issued for your arrest." The smile on my face was huge. My mother still helped me out. "See you, Peg," I called over my shoulder. My relief and joy ended the moment I realized what my mother had done. She simply did what I did with many of my problems. She simply put them on the back burner. Eric was sitting in the room, waiting for me. The look of disappointment and disgust on his face wasn't as bad as I expected. It was as if he could no longer be surprised by what I did, or he just didn't care about what I did anymore. The flight back to Michigan was the longest, quietest, most stressful flight of my entire life. Eric moved so far away from me that it was as if we were strangers. He seemed reluctant to touch me, for fear that my many imaginary sexually transmitted diseases might jump onto him and infect him. "Eric, thanks for coming for me," I said, "especially with our divorce and all. Perhaps you can come back to my hearing." "I'm not sure," he said. "Eric, we may be divorced," I said, "but we still have a child together, and there must be some feelings between us. If there was nothing left, you wouldn't have come for me. What else would you do? At the beginning of June?" He turned to me and smiled. It wasn't a sarcastic smile. He didn't smile because it hurt me or because it was some form of revenge. It was a sincere, happy smile, as if what he was thinking about brought him incredible pleasure. "Jenny wants a wedding in June," he said. "I think I'll get married or go on a honeymoon." And he was right. They got married just before my hearing, and they were on their honeymoon while I was returning to Las Vegas. The woman he married, Jenny, I have to admit, was both incredibly sweet and truly beautiful. She and Eric reminded me of those magnetic lamps that turn on when they are brought together. The closer they are to each other, the brighter they glow. The hardest thing for me was to accept the fact that somehow my way their mother accidentally brought them together. But this would never have happened if I had not pushed him away from me. My habit of procrastinating has finally kicked in. I put things off so far that I simply ran out of time. I had no chance of getting Eric back. I received a 2-year suspended sentence, during which I had to show up for random checks within 2 hours. I couldn't fly back and forth, and testing requirements made it impossible, so I had to move to Vegas. It was not difficult for Eric to take care of Eric full-time, but he, to his credit, brought her to Vegas to see me at least once a month and make sure I was involved in every decision about her life. He brought her to Vegas, and the 3 of us, plus Jenny, discussed when Erica decided to quit swimming. It turned out that this was a great decision because she was a good swimmer, but she could qualify for the Olympics in equestrianism. After I returned to Michigan, I lived a quiet life with my parents until my father died after a second heart attack. Now I live with my mother and work in a good job at the company Eric founded. I still hope to meet my next Mr. Right, and maybe it will happen someday. Erica burst into our room. "God, you smell like a horse," I said. "I fed them," she said. We moved into a large house with room for 2 horses and a paddock for Erica to train. There were also multi-use trails nearby where she rode horses and I ran. "Have you already told me?" she asked Jenny. "No," said Jenny. "Why does he wear sunglasses in bed?" Erica asked. "He thinks it's funny," Jenny said. "I'll give him a hint," Erica said. "Dad, how many people live in this house?" "5," I said. "You, me, Jenny, and your 2 horses." "No," she chuckled. "4." "One of the horses died?" I asked. "Of course not," she said. "I said people said they live at home." Remembering that she had already said 4, I had an idea. "Is your grandfather going to live with us?" "He's really dumb, isn't he?" she asked Jenny. "But he's cute," Jenny said. My 11-year-old daughter couldn't hold it in anymore. "We're having a baby, Daddy," she said excitedly. All I could do was sit up on the bed, looking at Jenny as if I was stunned. She nodded. This was to be one of the happiest days in a life full of them. Jenny and I loved each other completely and for the rest of our lives. My life was perfect. Tom convinced me to help him with his truck rental company. This gave me the idea to use several trucks to start a home delivery service for medical equipment. Within 2 years, the delivery service was bringing in 3 to 4 times more than truck rentals. We also started installing equipment and then started servicing and repairing it. With the increasing number of elderly people, any business in the medical industry brings in a lot of money. Dana, my ex-wife, works as a clerk at one of our properties. We're not close. I think too much water has passed under the bridge. Sometimes it still hurts me when I think about what she did to me, but we can come together when necessary. One of these times was about 8 years after our divorce. Erica was about to turn 18. She was a Yes Champion show jumper and was still my favorite person. Jenny and I have 2 other children, but for both of us, Erica has always been our baby. We love them all, but the 3 of us had a special connection. She was going to college to study veterinary science with an emphasis in equine science. Dana and I met and decided that there was no point in telling her about her birth and the fact that I was not her biological father. Sometimes the truth does more harm than good. I am, of course, no longer a member of the Great British Club. I gave a speech at a special meeting immediately after the cruise. In the speech, I told the guys that my time with them was over. The whole idea of the club was like a bandage on a wound. It was supposed to help us heal during a time of great emotional pain. I don't need this anymore, and I hope that with time others will heal too. I left Tom and Will in charge and gave them the lease of the club. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.